Publication Award, Group Achievement Award. He is also a reviewer of several Sky Index journals of high impact factor. He is a life member of Indian Nuclear Society. Dr. Lalit Singh sir is a founder member and industrial coordinator of the proposed Center of Dependability at IIT BHU. He is in the panel of Faculty Assessment Committee for Department of Computer Science and Engineering in IIT Roorkee to access their research profile and give recommendations. He is a member of the editorial board of many reputed journals and guest lead editor of many special issues. He is supervising many PhD students of different IITs, NITs, and is PhD thesis examiner of IITs, NITs, and other reputed institutes. He is an expert member of Industrial Policy Formation of IIT Rupar, BOS of many autonomous institutes, and member on the advisory board of many institutes and universities. He is a reviewer and project collaborator of research proposal of the Board of Research in Nuclear Sciences. He is also faculty of Nuclear Training Center, Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India. He is interfacing with other countries like Russia, USA, France, etc. for importing nuclear reactors that are based on new technologies. His research interests are in the area of reliability, safety, and security of safety, critical computer-based systems. So far, he has completed 33 projects for the Department of Atomic Energy, Government of India. Dr. Lalit Singh also holds a 620 rank in India in the list of world scientists released by ED Scientific Index. So I would request now Dr. A.G. Patil sir, warmly welcome Dr. Lalit Singh. A.G. Patil sir.
Yes, sir. Dr. Lalit Singh, welcome, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
You share your screen.
Yeah. Okay.
So, share screen.
Yeah.
Instead of the PowerPoint presentation, first share the screen.
Yeah, I have shared. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and it is changing also?
Yes, sir. Purpose is there. Now purpose slide is there. It's okay, sir. And now you make your camera also on, sir.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I'm just switching off my camera because it should not be then bandwidth problem. Otherwise, I can on. The audience should not get it.
You can keep your camera on. No problem will be there. Sir.
Yeah.
If you are comfortable, you can switch off. In between, you can switch on. Like that, you can do. And we'll make the arrangement that question answer session will be at the end. Okay, sir?
Yeah. So should I start?
Yes, sir. You can start now.
Okay. So thank you for the introduction, and I will also like to thank the organizing committee members who has given me this opportunity to share some of the experience to all the participants. So I'll be talking on the research methods which are specifically based on the industry requirements, because we all know, like, you know, the India is like not very advanced in the research. And one of the main factors is because we are lacking the industrial oriented research that can transform into some kind of societal impact. So I'll be talking about the research method that can be like industry oriented. So if you look into the purpose, it is to make all the attendees familiar with the process of the research, rigorous research in the academic environment, and to encourage all the attendees to critically evaluate the research papers, because it is very important. Like people are the literature survey. The literature survey is the first benchmark, and which is an important phase that every researcher should strive on, because if you are dealing with or if you are going with the wrong literature survey, probably you will be leading with the will not be leading with your objective. And it is also to outline the processes that are required to undertake the research projects, because you have to show the enough confidence on the research on the industries, that you have to really show your competitiveness, so that the industry can have a good confidence on you to grant a research project. So the topics that I'll be covering on are the overview of the research process and how we can perform the literature research. I'll be also touching on the report writing, the data collection, what should be the data collection methodology, and the presentation, the data presentation as well, because it gives the opportunity to all the stakeholders to identify the correct data. And because generally, everywhere the data is very bulky, and the definitely there are a lot of challenges involved in the collecting the data, but digging out the data or the mining of the data poses much challenges. So we have to look into that, and then I'll be talking on a statistical analysis of data and sampling strategies. And then I'll be how we can make the presentation, and what are the various survey research methods. Then we can go for the review. So what should be the research process, basically, that if you look into. So first we should know what is research. So research is not about just writing the paper or just collecting the paper. And if I talk about the ethical issues, generally the people in India, they are just cutting and pasting the existing work to compile a new paper, and that may get published in the inferior journals or the paid journals. So that is not all about the research. It is all about the discovery of the new things that have been independently verified by the other professionals. So discovery of the new thing is not an imagination entity, if I should make clear. So if I am discovering any new thing, it should be independently verified. Why I am saying independently? Because there should not be any wide biasing, and the other professionals who are working on your area, they should be able to verify it. And it also adds something new to the humanity, or that for some social impact. So it is not just new to you or your group. It is not a research. It should be new to the community. It should new to the society. And if you look into the good and bad research examples, so for example, a high school research paper, a good idea. No, it may not be a example of the good research, but ultimately, whatever the new idea that you are thinking, you should be able to prove that idea mathematically or experimentally. So the tested outcomes for the new idea is very important, and that is known as the research. And definitely the nobility should be there. It should not happen like already the things are existing and you are just manipulating in your own manner. So if you look into the scientific method, the we should we should have the prior knowledge. So where the prior knowledge will come? The prior knowledge will come from the literature survey, and hence literature survey is the first benchmark, and which has to be very rigorous, and which has to be very systematic and in a directional manner. And then basically you have to analyze the existing models, the numerical models. Probably you may have to derive the existing numerical models or analytical model. And you have to independently verify that, at least the existing knowledge. And then you have to add on, you have to keep on thinking about the gaps which may be very important and needs to be solved. And then you can start working on it. And the outcome will be recognized as a major contribution to the field. And that you can publish in the form of paper. So this is the entire philosophy of the research that one should one should follow. And if you talk about the research community, so all use the same scientific method and all follow the same ethical principles. This is very important. And now in India, the UGC or the AICTC, these bodies, as I'm involved in these bodies also, so very strict actions are now they have decided to take, not only against the researcher but also against the supervisor if some ethical issues has been ignored. So on all use the same language and terms. The notations are very standard. For example, if I talk about the processor, everybody will understand what does the processor mean. What is the flip-flop or what is the speed of the computer, and all provide information to the worldwide community, which is reported in a full or open manner. And all acknowledge the previous work of others. This comes under the ethical principles. It should not happen. You are just copying and pasting the existing methods and you are claiming that this is your work. So it is generously, you should acknowledge or you should give the proper citations, and you should clear cut, you should specify what is your own contribution. So the publications and regarding the referencing, the archival literature must be there and must be reviewed by the independent professionals before publications, so that the plagiarism check and all those things can be taken care. Or it should also not happen like you have taken some contribution of an author and you have intentionally you are not putting his name, or you have not taken any support from any author and intentionally you are trying to put in to give some kind of favor. So it must be complete so others can reproduce the results. So and these three are very important, which form the basic validity test. And if you look into the types of publications, you can publish as a simple report or as a scientific paper in refereed and journals or conference papers, the newspaper articles and a as a form of white paper or advertisement. So you must only rely on the refereed papers in accredited journals and conferences. That is more important. It should not have. So that is why UGC has approved a list of journals. Or if you talk about the SCI journals, so the papers are the journals are indexed in the SCI. So you should use or you should take these journals only for the publications to get some credibility in your work. And so these are some questions like, how can you tell the length of the title, the references, the author's name, affiliation, the evidence that the paper has been reviewed and revised, the date of submission, The paper includes a review of the previously published work. So conclusions contains a critical reflection on the contents of the articles. So you can just type in the Google Scholar. You can type your the author name or the paper title. Probably you can find all these details. And so research is all about the next step. So currently some benchmark. Probably if you are working in, for example, operating system field or networking field. So what is the current benchmark and how you are trying to advance the research? So it is all about the incremental advance as compared to paradigm shift. You are not going to do any invention. Nobody is expecting. It may be your small contribution, very small contribution, but it may add some kind of advancement in the current benchmark. So now if you talk about the literature research, so it is also a very systematic an approach you should follow, and you should know like who has done what and how it has been done, because until you will not come to know what has been done, you will not be able to think beyond that. It may be possible like you are trying to reinvent the wheel and how the thing has been done, because that will give you several ideas, like how, whether you have to follow the same approach or there is lacuna in the existing approach and you can probably rectify the approach. You may be trying to improve the accuracy or the performance of any particular object. So and you should also like formulate like what is their plan for the future work. Have they reported more recent work in a conference? So recent work is very important.
Excuse me,
It
sir.
should not happen.
One minute, please, sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Dr. Lalit Singh, please, sir. Ek minute.
Yeah.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible. Praveen Sorte. I want to make one announcement. Praveen.
And you should also like formulate like. Hello, should I start? Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Yeah. So the recent work is very important because it should not happen. You are referring the 10 years, older journals. So there may be a lot of advancement beyond that, and you have to always try to look into the recent journals, which will. So it is a kind of like backtracking. You have to first start with the recent and then try to back digging. You can also refer the journals which have been cited in the recent journals, and that will again give a lot of opportunity to think beyond your imagination. So so all these things are very important, and the keywords you should while searching, definitely the keywords are the important entities which is essential for the searching the literature, and it must be both generic or specific, because what happens while problem formulation, the literature helps you out in the problem formulation. And if you sometimes what I feel is, okay, I'll be working on this specific area. For example, I'll be working on how to increase the response time of any particular device, or how to analyze the response time, or how to quantify the response time. But it may be possible that the things might get such saturated, maybe with respect to you. And while looking at the generic, words, keywords, you may find many other open areas in which you may be interested to work on. So the literature search and study is almost a year process if you look into the IIT model, so or any other good university model, because it really gives a very strong foundation of your research. And publication delay means you can check the paper and see the submission date and the publication date, and generally it depends on the uh, general to general basically. So if you are trying to uh, target your PhD, for example, okay, you are only 1 year left, and accordingly you have to choose the journal. I'm not saying like you have to choose the inferior journal. Definitely you'll have to choose the uh, SCI journals or the university approved journals, but among these journals also, every journal has has the different time limits to give the review result, and you have to see like which is the fastest journal in which you can make it out. Because if suppose the review results comes after 3 months or 4 months or even 6 months, some journals like again, and if you get the rejection again, your entire 6 months will be wasted, and you have to again give a fresh start by incorporating these comments that you have received from the reviewers. So now, planning for an outcome, that is a more important activity in the research. What is the convincing proof? So suppose you have done something. Okay, you have done a great job as per you. Now, what is the proof? You have to prove it. Mathematically, you have to prove it experimentally. And mathematical proof, if you look into the transactions kind of paper, IEEE transactions or ACM transactions, generally these contain the mathematical proof, because 1 plus 3 is going to 3 anywhere, everywhere. It is, while if you are going for the experimental proof, it may be giving good results under one situation and maybe bad results under another situation. And so what is the evidence? You should be ready for the answers. What is the evidence you will provide? Data, about there should be the evidence of the data. You should not do the tampering of the data or stealing of the data or manipulating the data. Generally, it has been seen for the publication purpose, the people always try to manipulate the data, but you cannot publish it in the good journal by doing that. You have to be, and it is also unethical as well. Sampling techniques, as I said, the data is always in a huge quantity, and you have to identify the potential data which can be more relevance with your work. And what is the accuracy of that data? It should not happen like you are collecting the inaccurate data, because that will give you the inaccurate results. And you also have to be very clear, okay, whatever you are doing, who are your stakeholders? It means who will be interested in your particular research, or where you will release or where you will publish your research results, which journal will be best appropriate. That is also very important. And you have to anticipate the problems by team planning meetings, by circulating the outcomes immediately following the meeting, or design some action items. So the equipment, if probably if you are working on some experimental study, the equipment calibration, or for example, in the case of power systems, the reliable power, or the preventing the data loss, all those things are the you need to take care. and you can then publish the data accordingly. And general rankings are also very important. So you can look about the general rankings, and accordingly you can select the generals. Now, before pursuing the research, you have to plan the research. That is very important. And while planning the research, you have to perform the concurrent engineering. And concurrent engineering, with that includes you have to, for example, assemble the equipments. You have to analyze that. You have to arrange the equipments accordingly. You have to model those equipments, or you have to equipments means any objects. I'm not only talking about the mechanical equipments. So you have to model accordingly. You have to fit in your data into your model, and you may try to, depending on the outcomes, you may be wanting to refine your model. And then you can see the good results. You can write the paper and then choose a journal. So using the right language is very important. You should not misuse the terms. So definition of the terms, the standards, the standard uses, the standard methods of the analysis. These should be acceptable to the research community. The standard measurement procedures, the standard values, right? So all these standardization is very important, because ultimately, as I said, you are not pursuing the research for your own. You are doing the research for the research community, and he should also agree with you. So anyway, these are all the activities. Then I'll be also touching on the report writing. So report that if you look into the title, the 10 to 15 words are most common title, and it should be very specific. It should not be a broad. For example, if you are working on a vehicle number plate recognition, you should not give like the pattern recognition, because pattern can be anywhere. Pattern may be, probably you would be wanting to identify some patterns into the data, and data could be your numeric data, it could be your vector data, it could be your image data as well. So you have to be very specific. For example, like automatic vehicular number plate system recognition system. So these titles should be very specific, and it will give it a lot of advantage to the research community in terms of the researchers, the new researchers, which are trying to advance your research, and he would be wanting to read your research, for which he have to type in the Google or the search engine the relevant keywords. And the abstract basically should be very precise. For example, if I say like high speed electronic beam switching is a desirable feature of the smart antennas. Okay. And the next, for example, line I write, the most smart antennas are too large for most applications and require significant power during normal operations. Then a 13 element switched parasitic antenna was optimized for gain, speed, and beam coverage. See, this is the precise abstract. You are in one line, you are just giving a background or the overview, like high speed electronic beam switching is a desirable feature. So everybody would come to know, yes, it is, because you have to start from somewhere. You have to create a motivation. So, okay, I have come to know, like, okay, this is an important thing, like high speed electronic beam switching. And I have also come to know, like, what is the existing knowledge or advancement in this particular area. So I have written, most smart antennas are too large for most applications and require significant power during normal operations. And then what is my contribution? I have written in the third line. So the abstract should be, you need not to tell the entire story. You have to be very precise. You have to just first start from the importance or from the motivation and why you are doing what is the importance of this particular subject on which you are working, and then what is the current advancement and what is your then contribution. So I think 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 lines are sufficient enough for an abstract. Then probably you can give more insight about your paper or about your work, that antenna characterizes were determined at 1.8 gigahertz by finite element modeling and measurement on the prototype. So here you are trying to give the precise idea about your work, like the characteristics were determined at 1.8 gigahertz, and what is the methodology that you have used by finite element modeling and measurements on the prototype. It means you are using the prototype for the measurement. You are not using the existing or the functional the model or the system. Okay, and you can add at the antenna has a gain. What is your conclusion? What you got from this? The antenna has a gain of plus 9.8 dBi, a footprint of less than a half wavelength squared, and was fished in less than 100 microsecond. And this is a way, like you should write the abstract, because generally you get the editorial reject, not even the reviewer results, reviewer rejections. In most of the good journals, specifically if you target about that IEEE kind of journals, transactions, or the other kind of journals, most of the journals are getting rejected editorial by editors itself, because they can have a look. The first look will be your work contribution by looking into the abstract, and thereafter organization of the paper, and what is your citations, whether your work is based on the recent study or not. And this is a better performance compared to the previous antennas you can add on. So a general guide, if you look into the abstract, it may be of 2 sentences on the wider field, that may discuss the context and the significance, and 2 sentences on the research method, and 2 sentences on the results and conclusions. And let us see what are the do's and what are the don'ts. The past tense, like, okay, you should, if you are using it, should be consistent. So you have to look into, you have to be very sensitive. Like third person, if you are talking, you have to be very consistent, and it should not be odd. And usually the timing of events is not included unless it is essential to data collection. So what are the sections and subsections? So all those are basically the things that you need to take care. And creating equations, it should be, you should not use just that writing text. You should use the maths equations. For example, if you are writing in the Word, you can see there is an equation tool which you can click, and there you can write, and it automatically comes into the italics. And there are the standard forms of non-scalar symbols, often which are in lowercase or italics and non-bold. And vector symbols are generally in uppercase and bold. These are the general, trend the researchers are continuously being followed. And the symbols must be the same uh, font on every occasion used in the equations and in the main text also. So all the symbols must be predefined. Either you can create a list of acronyms or notations where you can define all the symbols and acronyms. So Microsoft equations, as I said, you can use it. And now data collection is very important. How you can, because for your research, you have to work on some kind of data. I'm not saying that maybe only the quantified data, that may be a qualitative data, that may be a quantitative data, that may be a binary data. So let us look on the types of the data that you may be interested in your particular research work. So the data type can be quantitative, which will be in numerical form that consists of integers, for example, the counts of the animals, the packet received, the bit rate, a big error, or so on. And it may be also non-integers, like what is the analog sensor output. Okay, so it may be in terms of 1.2 or real numbers. And your data may be the qualitative also, which can be in form of descriptive words. It may be binary data also. For example, the pump, if you are dealing with the mechanical equipment, whether your pump is in on or off, what is the failure modes of your pump, your close and open, about your valves, the valve is closed, your valve is closed, on, yes or no, success, failures, and these are the kind of binary data. Scalar information maybe like 1D dimension, 2 dimension, or n dimension, and similarly the vector information. So if you look the quantitative data, it can be in many forms. For example, the failure data can be a quantitative data. So can we, if see like Kelvin's first law of measurement, the measurement must not alter the event being measured. So it is very important. And like for example, I'm interested to know like what is the microwave current measurements, what is the impedance of my antenna, of an antenna. These may be the quantitative data for in this problem statement. And the data can be represented in form of histograms, the pie chart, or the printed papers if it is the image data, or the color in the PowerPoint slides, or and we may have to do the interpolation or the extrapolation of the data, because it may be possible some data may be missing, and you may be interested to derive that data, and you may have to interpolate by understanding the data, and you may also have to extrapolate the data. So you have to go for the curve fitting or the contour plots. So you can see like there are the various plotting and analysis tools that include MS Excel or MATLAB or Python. These are the good software tools where you can analyze your data. For example, if you are working on the data science, then the Python is the best appropriate. And if you are working on the scientific application, probably the MATLAB or the Fortran language may be more specific. And if you look into the graphing guideline, always you should plot the discrete points very clearly, and do not join the points until you have a continuous mathematical function. This is for the clarity of the data interpretation. To compare the data, plot several lines on the same axis. So you have to plot the several lines on the same axis if you are trying to compare, to give a good comparative study, and consider including error bars on all the points. So for example, you can see it is the first figure it is a good practice where you have, descriptize your points. And if you are joining, okay, it is a kind of bad practice, like so I mean, it depends like in what way basically you're trying to interpret for the contour. If you want to draw the contour using the MATLAB, you can basically do in multiple ways, the way basically you can analyze these contours. This is also the kind of the data which you can, and then the data can also be in the form of qualitative data, and this can be a challenge as everyone will have a different opinion or use the different description. See, when uh, the data is in numerical form, everybody will talk precisely in the same language. But in the qualitative terms, everybody may talk in a different language. They may have a different description. For example, if I say the virus, somebody may call worm, somebody may call some other thing. So one approach is to convert all the qualitative data into the quantitative data. For example, rate may vary from very good to very bad on the score of 10 to 1 or whatever. In this way, you can try. And yeah. So this is the decision matrix. Basically, you may, in many times, you may have to derive the data accordingly, which will give you a clear-cut idea. And decision matrix, why? Because based on this, you may decide something based on the cost, based on the size, based on the warranty. For example, if I'm talking about the vehicle. So ultimately, what you are going to do with your data, you are going to decide something, right? You are processing that data and gives you some conclusions. And decision matrix you can draw in terms of histogram to interpret it with respect to different angles. And the data collection, you can so this is a very important activity, the data collection, and you have to ask the right questions without leading the person, because if you will collect the incorrect data, it will not fulfill your research objective. And you have to use the redundant questions that always need a positive response. And the survey results are also good practice, and you have to follow that. And if you look into the flow chart, okay, we can make the flow chart also. So for example, what I want to do, from where I need to start. So for example, I need to initiate the equipment, yes or no. If it is no, then again I have to go back, and if yes, I have to perform some calculation and stop the process. And these basically these things are very important for your analysis purpose, for your research formulation, as well as for conducting your research. There may be various phases in which you may be. So data modeling is a very important phase in the research that will drive our entire research. And you can plot your data or in various tools, or you can draw the flow chart also in the various tools. And now next I'll be also touching on the statistical analysis and sampling, because if you are working on the historical data, for example, if now the current trend is artificial intelligence or machine learning, so what is did that make the use of the statistical data for, and which help you to make the statistical models. and it is your duty to analyze the statistical data, and you have to sample the data because you cannot process the GBs of data, in terabytes of data, because daily you get the data, it may be some process, you may be getting the data in GBs daily. And so you cannot process the entire data. You need to have a very fast computation speed, which is not possible at all. And hence, you have to do the proper sampling as such that the integrity of the entire process should be retained. It should not be jeopardized. And generally we say like when your data does not follow any distribution, it follows the normal distribution or the standard distribution. So why I am emphasizing on this fact, that if you are having the lack of data and you are not you are not able to get a distribution of the data, because just for the distribution you should have the sufficiency of the data, and so you have to assume the normal distribution, which is the universally accepted distribution on which you can start working on. And you also have to think with respect to the experimental error, because the experiments that you will be performing, that may contain the error. So how does this compare with your results? Is your result significant statistically? All these are very important. And now you have to you also have to look into the relationships between the data. So whether those data are linearly correlated, and you have to fit a line of your data to understand like probably the outliers or the behavior of the data. And the sampling, as I said, is a very important activity due to the bulkiness of the data. And so we have to take the sample where a small number of candidates selected from the population, and it is impossible to know from an examination of your sample alone if your sample is a representative of the whole population. So you have to do a lot of analysis to ensure that your sampling is basically a representative of the entire data. That is very important. These are the couple of examples. For example, if in Australia the total population over 18 years votes in an election, before the election the press like to take a small sample, the population, to estimate the likely outcome of an election, and this is called polling. And they hope that the sample is representative of the entire population. And how do they select a representative sample for the telephone poll? So what is the postal code? What is the telephone book? These may be required probably maybe an important attributes for your research. So like all samples may be biased also. So why? Because of the age, because of the human factors that may include the age or shyness or working time, mental pressure, etc. For example, 6 people live in a single house, and we want to randomly select 2 to get an idea of the use of mobile phones in the house. So to do this, we could visit at 10 a.m. on a weekday, then visit 3 p.m. on a weekday, then telephone at 8 p.m. on a weekday, then visit on Saturday morning at 10 a.m., visit on Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. and so on. So we need to ask a question. How do you rate your use of a mobile on a scale of 1 to 10? Such kind of, it depends on your basically field of interest. So 10 means very continuously, like greater than 20 hours per week, or 1 means never. So you have to, it many of the times you may have to create a threshold in your data. So the thresholding basically, helps you uh, for whether your data is lying under this process range. And so you may have the various, for example, in terms of opinions also you may rate. Like Mary stays at home, going shopping and drives children to school at 8 a.m. and picks 3 p.m. So rating you are doing 4. And so on. Like, for example, the Reco is retired and stays in a house all day. So it is 1. An average value is this. And these are the, you are trying to interpret your data like, in multiple forms, because research is all about digging. You don't know like which form will be more suitable for you. And how many possibilities, like for example 2 people from the total population of n people, we have p combinations, so you can here applying the permutation and combinations. So there are like 15 it may be possible there are 15 different combinations. Like lowest result from a sample of 2 people could be Rocco and Fred, or 5 combinations lie between 4 and 5. I request you, all of you, to please mute themselves because I'm getting disturbance. So the greater the need for a very accurate result, the smaller the chance of fulfilling any compromise, even the best method of the approach. And there are the various strategies, sampling strategies. As I said, sampling plays a very important role. You can use either the clustered sampling, stratified sampling, destructive sampling. For example, like in the clustered sampling, you have to select a sample from only those parts of the population which are relevant, and you have to ignore rest of the part. For example, choose only those people who use road at the peak hour, because if you are choosing the people who are not using at all, you will, these are the outliers and you should ignore. In the case of stratified sampling, you, for example, select a sample proportionally to use who are likely to use the road at the peak hour, and those that don't. Like so, so for example, 4/6 use at the peak hour, 2/6 don't. So use a sample of 3, 2 who travel at peak hour and 1 that does not. So, and then destructive sampling, for example, if a sample is destroyed by sampling, that is their mind is changed, then clearly you should not sample all the people, right? So it should also be considered. So it all depends on the context. I have just touching upon the various examples that could have a best match on the particular kind of sampling. So you have to only select for that. And the traces strength testing, sometimes you have to do, for example, like a production line of notebook computers produces 2000 units per day. The company is required to strength test for failure 15 samples per day. How do you select those samples? You may have to use the Monte Carlo method, which is a random sampling technique to define the effect of a larger number of parameters on an outcome. So, and generally it is usually between 0.1% and 1% of the total population, and usually applied to the complex systems which are described by the mathematics. So we basically, what we do in Monte Carlo method, we randomly select the parameters and just fit in, just give those parameters. These are the basic inputs, and we give these inputs to the model and observe the outputs. And it is also used in the optimization process. So and then in the random, there is a random sampling also, where we decide like how I can choose a team of, for example, 6 people randomly from this class. So if your family name, probably based on a student number or the seat location or the intelligence level or every third person, even and out, whatever the logic you want to apply. And but the crux is every person must have an equal probability of choosing. It should not be biased like while choosing. And you can use the random numbers generators also, like RAND is a random number generator for various random numbers. And then in the sample rate, also like example, this could be also data type which you may be wanting to interpret, for example, the number of samples per second, or in a digital recording, the sensor system. The digital recording sensor system, this might be obviously initially, but there may be overheads when you need time to send or to store the data. So in an analog system, this is regulated by the filter response, so oversampling and undersampling, Nyquist sampling, all those things. And then after that, I'll also touching about the making presentation, how we can make the presentation. So generally, if you want to showcase your work in the form of the presentation, so maximum number of slides, you should make by considering like you should devote at least 1 minute in one slide. So slide is not about the reading, it is about discussing or trying people to visualize about your contents of the slide. And so if optimal number of so maximum number of slides you can choose at the rate of 1 per minute, optimal number 1 per 2 minutes. So because more you will describe rather than you would be interested in counting the number of slides that you have been taken for showcase your work, and using slides as a reminder of what you will say. So during a presentation, you do not read what is in your slides. 100 words maximum on each slide should be there. So font size, drafts, colors, these are it should be clearly visible. The movies, if you want to embed pictures, lighting, all those stuff needs to be taken care. And regarding images, you must acknowledgement the source of the image if you are using the existing image. And like organization, 10 net should be 10 minute talk, how we can organize. And like a title slide 1 minute, outline slide 1 minute, introduction, where you can talk about your wider research context, the main text. You can talk about the method that you have adopted in your research, what are the equipment required or the resources required, and what are the various results in 4 to 6 minutes. And then you can conclude the session in 1 minute along with talking about the references in 1 minute. And to deal with the nervousness, you also always memorize first 2 to 3 sentences, because if your start is good, you can easily carry over the things. So make sure that you have the keywords on your PowerPoint to trigger your memory. Do not start speaking until the title slide is visible to the audience, and be polite before you speak. Introduce yourself to the session chair before the session starts. Wait, load your presentation and wait for the chair to introduce you before you speak. Switch off your mobile phone. That is important. And then you have to thank the chairperson for the introduction. Speak clearly. Pretend you are talking to the back row of seats in the room, and it means you need to project your voice and acknowledgement to acknowledge your co-authors or friends in your slides. Rigidly stick to the allocated presentation time. That is more important, because the presentations may be in pipeline, and the other person, if you are extending the presentation, you are eating up the others time, and basically you are also irritating the audience. The audience will stop taking interest in you. And so you have to clearly indicate the presentation is furnished by the slide and say thank you to the audience, and do not invite questions from the audience. This is the role of the chairperson, not yours. And so then you can go back to the seat and do not discuss your paper with others during the next talk. If necessary, leave the room once the session is complete. Thank the chairperson. Write references for it is for scientific rigorness, in case someone is in the audience has made a major contribution to the field, so the audience can follow up on your previous publications. And then survey research methods. This topic also I want to include. So this is all about how to prepare and analyze a survey. So it is all about preparing a questionnaire. So the research question, it should be very precise. And do you think that the working in this building is making you feel sick, for example? So the role of the researcher is to develop the research plan, design the survey instrument, select the sample population, issue or distribute the survey, prompt the sampling population for responses, analyze the data, and generate conclusions. And stakeholders are like who are having any kind of interest like in your work. And so anonymous responses, so arguments for yes, these are the anonymous. So sample population might be less influenced by who is asking the questions, and respondent might be less concerned about others learning of their opinions. So, and then confidentiality, you need to ensure that confidentiality is assured before the survey is sent out. If you are probably if you are working in an organization and you are pursuing a research, being in that organization, you have to respect the confidentiality. The feedback you should have to like understand your weaknesses and strength, and sample timelines should also be there. And then yeah,
Hello.
yeah, hello,
Hello,
am I
sir.
audible? Yeah.
Yes, sir, you are audible. One participant is asking how to create the title of research. Can we take
Title.
the title of the research?
Yeah.
And one another request is there. Sir, if you are having some industry oriented data regarding that, you can show some slides.
This data I'm showing, probably industry oriented data will not be useful to the participants, because that may be related, but definitely I can touch upon those points, not an issue. And regarding the title, as I told you, the title should be very specific. For example, I can give you a couple of examples. As one example already I have given, suppose I want to design a system for the vehicle number plate recognition. So I should not, it is a kind of pattern recognition, but I should not write the title as a pattern recognition. I should use the vehicle number plate recognition, because there are the multiple benefits. If first is which kind of journal you are targeting. For example, if you are targeting IEEE transactions on vehicular technology, It may accept if you will be just writing the pattern recognition. This journal will not accept, and it will say like it is out of the scope. The second one is when your work gets published, because it is on not only for you, it is for the entire community. The other person should also come to know like who all other researchers are working in the same area, or what work has been reported in this particular area. He may not be interested with respect to the researcher. He may be interested with respect to the work, but that will only can be searched if you will provide the specific title. The other title, for example, if I want to analyze the response time of a like particular system, for example, shutdown system of a nuclear power plant. So that may target in IEEE transactions on nuclear science, or annals on nuclear energy, or progress on nuclear energy, which are Elsevier journals, or even the nuclear engineering and technology, nuclear engineering and design. And so the target audience will come to know, okay, I'm looking for the nuclear aspect, so my domain is clear, and what actually this is all about, this paper is all about. For example, if I say fault diagnosis in safety critical systems. So fault diagnosis may be with respect to any system, but specifically if I'm dealing with the safety critical systems, which the failure of which can lead to the catastrophic disasters. For example, in the field of medical domain, in the field of aerospace, in the field of nuclear domain, in the field of military domain, probably people would be more interested who are working on the safety critical domain. For example, I could be using a title testing of the safety critical computer based systems. So two things are clear. One is I'm talking about the testing. Second one is I'm talking about the safety critical system. Third one is I'm talking about the software systems, not the mechanical systems, not the electrical systems. So these are the salient points where we can basically talk, we can discuss, we can put the title accordingly. I hope I could make your point clear. Anyway, I think we can take all the questions in the end of our session. So definitely you can keep on hold up on your
Okay, sir.
questions. We will definitely take. Yeah. So and then okay, so writing questions also. This we have already discussed. And so yes, this is all about like what are your potential data, what is your potential information which can help you to advance your research. So these are very important. And so scoring, as I said, you can rate from 1 to 5 or 5 to 1. It all depends basically the context. And some sample, like open-ended, there should be open-ended and close-ended questions. For example, please identify at least 3 things that can cause your concern, cause you concern in this work environment. So reporting, like you have to calculate the average and statistics of each of the theme. You may have to construct the histogram. In this way, you can report the data. The missing data, you have to be very careful for the missing data. As I said, your data, sampling data should be the representative of the entire data. Accuracy and the reliability of the data is very important. So, and these are the references that I have taken from. And the review is the very important process for the research. So what is the research process that I need to review? And there should be the, as I said, independent verification of the results and designing the experiment for the outcomes. The literature search, what is the methodology that you adopted for the literature search? That is also very important. If you look into some of the papers, they specify how you can how you went for the literature search. And specifically, if you are writing the review paper, you will find like literature search is an important section that needs to be deal with very carefully. And report writing, data collection, presentations, what are the format of equations, figures, your methods, statistical analysis, sampling, and then making a presentation. Then survey the research methods. You should also review in that part why this presentation is required, right? So all these things are basically important. So anyway, so these all I wanted to discuss about. Now let us go through the all the questions which the people would be interested, the participants would be interested to ask. So either you can unmute yourselves and you can start asking the questions, so I can answer the questions accordingly.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
Your presentation mode is not there.
Presentation I have finished. I'm looking for the questions. Like if anybody is having some doubt, I'll be happy to answer those questions. I have done with my presentation.
Okay, sir. How to avoid, one question is there from Jyoti. How to
Yeah.
avoid rejection, sir? How to deal with novelty issue? Novelty
Yeah,
issues,
this is
how to deal with this one?
Yeah, this is a very important. First of all, avoid rejection. How to avoid rejection? See, if you will be, I tell you my experience. If you look into some of the papers, first of all, you should always, as I said, the literature survey is the first benchmark. You should always go through the good journals, the papers which are published in the good journals. The reason is those works are credible, and these are not copied and pasted work basically. And when you are able to reproduce the model or the methodology given in that paper, definitely you will be able to come out with a lot of analysis and try to come out with some of the improvement. So once your honesty is there in your work, I don't think it will get a rejection. It will never get a rejection. It will get the rejection when you will try to just write some rubbish things or copying and pasting from here and there. So always be honest with your work and do hard work. And because research is it requires dedication also. Intelligence may not be very much required. Definitely, the average student can do the research, but dedication is required very much. So definitely, you should deal with this, and this will also address your nobility issue as well. Because once you are referring the credible journal, and then you are, if you are thinking like you can do this, then you can again go back to the search and you see like whether this thought process has been taken care by anybody. And if you are not finding, you can start working on it.
Hello. Any other questions from audience? Again, how to create?
One question I could see, whether paid journal good or not for the researcher. Paid journals are very bad, and because I'm into various recruitment committees of different IITs and NITs also, and which clearly says like if you are applying for the faculty positions, the paid journals are not considered. So never go for the paid journals.
Written, very informative session, excellent session, good session, like that. Any other questions from participants? Very informative session. How to write abstract?
See,
Okay,
that
sir.
was my starting point. I think you
Forward
might have
that.
missed my slide,
Yes,
and
sir.
I told you like the two questions should be about the two sentences should be about introduction. The two sentence should be about the method, the existing practices that are being followed. The two sentences should be about your work. Then the two sentences should be the results of your work. And that should be the format of your abstract. It should not contain more than 8 to 10 sentences.
Another one question is there. Does impact factor of journal is necessary to choose the journal for our paper publication?
See, it all depends. One is the first one, if you are publishing the science citation index, because if you look into the recruitment of the good universities and the government universities, in fact, in the private good universities are there, where they specify like, okay, I am only considering the SCI index papers. So indexing is very much important. So you should always strive for the university approved journals or SCI journals. Impact factor comes in secondary. So definitely, because impact factor, if it is much, definitely the richness of the research may vary. And impact factor also depends on the area of the research also. For example, if you look into the artificial intelligence, currently it is on boom, and the various all the industries may be referring. So it all depends on the field of the research as well. So it may be a secondary factor, but the credibility of the journal should be there, and the credibility can be uh, proved by taking the AICTC, this university approved journals or SCI index journals or Scopus journals. Okay.
Again, one question.
How to write a review paper, I have already told you. To write a review paper, first you have to go through the methodology. You have to go for the existing research, and the review paper, I personally believe, is the most challenging paper, because here you have to refer at least 80 to 200 papers. So you have to have a bulk knowledge of the existing current research which you are trying to report. And not only report, a review paper is not only the summarization of the current state of art, but also what are the salient findings and what are the roadmap, basically, to identification to identify the limitations, the challenges, the issues, and how to overcome that. So a review paper, it is a myth, or generally the people feels like, okay, review paper is just a copying and pasting from the 100 journals and that's all. It is not like this. You have to put a lot of effort.
Any more questions from participants? Hello. Sir, can you highlight on some industry-oriented research?
Yeah, industry-oriented research, as I told you, the research is not all about writing the papers, but you are trying to solve some real-time problem, the challenging problem. And you have to, take a challenging problem. You can read the good papers and try to solve those challenging problems. And so ultimately it will lead to a study of the good journals which are basically trying to solve the challenging problems. For example, you will find the journals from IEEE transactions on industrial informatics, from IEEE transactions on industrial electronics. These are the core journals which are totally industry oriented. So you can refer those journals.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Very informative session.
Thank you.
We have covered maximum topics related with the how to write the paper, literature search, report writing, data collection, attribute data, then the presentation style, how to keep the presentation, statistical analysis along with the attributes, along with the variables. Concurrent engineering also you have touched, survey research method in detail. You have talk about that one. Very, very thank you, sir. Now we have to take the photograph, sir. So
Yeah.
all participants, please make your video on. Along with participants, sir, we want to take the photographs. Participants are requested to make the photo, to make your camera on. Sir, wait for 2-3 minutes. All participants are requested to make your video on. This is for two purposes. One is the attendance and second is the for the memory also. Two things are there. All are requested to make your camera quickly on. 50% cameras are on. Praveen Daure, Kante, RMOT 17, Anil Pawar, Daure, RMOT 156. Please make your camera on. Swapnil, Praveen, RMOT 56, 58, Lokesh, M. Balaji, Rohan Khan. Please make your camera on. Yes, sir. Sir, please, one more minute. Atul Devre, Anil Pawar, Swati Shinde, Rinki, Vinit Srivastav, RMOT 57. Please make your camera on. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you all the participants. Next session will start at 3:30 p.m. Thank you, sir. Thank you all participants. Next session will start at 3:30 p.m. Dr. Gorane from Government Polytechnic Nasik will deliver on the particularly survey of the survey, how to create the survey and how to take the survey research. On that topic, Dr. Gorani will take the lecture. We'll meet at 3:30. Thank you.